Today we are talking about granny flats. Now, no, it's not how much to build a granny flat and, should I build a 2-bedroom and an ensuite or a 1-bedroom or a studio granny flat or get one of those shipping containers in that they turn into granny flats and all that and subdivision and all that stuff. No, this is it's a bit deceitful, isn't it, Nathan?
It is. It is technical, boring, but also really important.
Yes. And, well, I was talking like the name's a little bit deceitful. Yeah. And you are hearing the voice of Nathan Fradley. He has been on Retire Right before and he's popped into the studio. We're going to do a heap of episodes with Nathan. But today's episode is about the technical term, is it the granny flat right?
Correct, yeah.
In relation to Centrelink assessment.
Yeah, so it's a contractual, the right is a contractual part, and what we're really going to focus on today is why people do it, which is generally lifestyle and the Centrelink kicker.
Yes. Now, you are a licensed financial advisor. You specialise in maybe, I would say, niche technical cases for a variety of different people and clients all around Australia. Welcome back to Retire Right. You ready to talk about the granny flat provisions?
Let's do it.
All right. My name is Glen James. It's time to retire right.
This is a podcast that will help you plan and execute one of the biggest moments in your life. That's retirement. You'll learn how to set up your finances in a way that benefits you, your lifestyle goals, and keeps you in the know within this complex world of money and investing. Your host is Glen James, former financial advisor, author, and host of the popular Money, Money, Money podcast. Glen is joined by experts in various fields around the topic of retirement in Australia. Any advice in this podcast is of a general nature. Full details are in the show notes of this episode. You only retire once, so retire right.
Now, if you are watching on YouTube, there is a presentation, and I will say, if you're not watching on YouTube, that's okay. It's more to keep us on track and to, give something for people to read if they are watching at home. But if you are driving along in the car and you obviously can't watch this while you're driving, we will do our best to also make this good. So let's go to the first part of this presentation. You've got a couple of points up here. Yeah, the best place to start, I heard, was at the start or from the top.
Yeah.
So I'll hand it to you and, we'll go from there.
I think the key to this is granny flat rights are complicated.
Right.
And we could get stuck in the weeds today and get tongue-tied and people will ask different questions and we're going to keep it high level because they are really complicated.
But we also will get stuck in the weeds.
We're going to get stuck in the weeds. We're going to, exactly, because we want to do that. It's fun. We want to make it real.
But this is grain of salt, high level.
There is levels to this that we can't cover in a time frame we're talking about. I think that's, and also, there's plenty of things that you can do yourself in this world, but this is definitely an area where you should involve professionals, be it advisors, be it lawyers. It can be curly because you're bringing in complications around contracts, you're bringing in complications around Centrelink, you're bringing in family matters, you're bringing in a lot that can go wrong. And that's why I think that's probably the key here. Yeah.
So what is a granny flat right?
Separate from the building, as you described earlier.
Yeah.
They're an interesting aspect of, I suppose, the Centrelink world, the social security world, because they are the right to live somewhere in exchange for assets, effectively. So it's kind of a way that the system has recognised that there's going to be situations where you might have a parent, a grandparent, who owns a house, is living by themselves, living as a couple, whatever it might be, and the family situation dictates that they might need to change their arrangement. And so without these, let's say you've got, mum and dad living in a house, they got a little bit of money, they're getting a full pension, pretty simple situation, and they're going to move in to help the kids, or maybe one of them passes away and the mum's really lonely, but she's still pretty young, doesn't go into care, anything like that. If she moves in with the kids, she's going to have all this money. It's going to be assessed. She's going to lose her pension. Life changes a lot. And if she gives that money to the kids without anything like this in the way, then she's also potentially going to be subject to gifting rules
Yeah,
and all
so
the other fun
without
stuff.
the granny flat right and provisions, you may trip over gifting pretty fast.
Yeah. And then if we flip it to the other side of it, if she gives away this money to help, the right also protects her. So the key to this is that it's the right of a life interest. It's the right to live somewhere, so that if she gives that money across, they don't turn around 12 months ago, guess what, Mum, you're annoying, get out. And we'll keep the cash.
So this is just for the total avoidance of doubt. It doesn't have to be an actual granny flat to use these provisions.
Correct.
It could be a 4-bedroom house that mum or dad put money into and, had this right that they've got the right to live there, and that wealth, the kids are enjoying it, or the grandkids, but it's not a gift.
Yeah, it's really important. I think that's where the misleading bit comes in as well, right? We don't have to build a little container house at the back, as flashy as they look. You could just move in. They could live in the same 4 walls.
Yeah.
They could give their house. So it could be the gifting of the asset as well.
Yes.
And so it allows for the flexibility
But they've
of
got
life.
the right to live there.
Correct. That's the key.
Yeah.
That's the key. That's the right bit.
And we will talk about some case studies. And I've got a question that I was talking to someone at a party the other night, weirdly, about this stuff. And I keep forgetting to bring it up with Martin, but this is the perfect episode for it. On this slide here, you could transfer assets, including money. So it doesn't have to be an actual house, or what's the go there?
It's consideration.
Right.
That's really the key. So a lot of this falls back to, we will mention it, this idea of deprived assets, which is the technical term that all the gifting stuff comes into.
Right.
So when we think about gifting is when money is given across with no consideration.
Yes.
And so that's where giving assets is the consideration. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So how does Centrelink assess granny flats?
Well, if we start at the basics, like how does Centrelink assess anything, they've got their asset and their income test. And so within that, they're going to look at, the shares you've got, your bank accounts, your contents, the car, all that kind of stuff. They're going to look at your income, the overseas pension they might have had because they were born in a different country. They're going to look at deeming on assets, they're going to look at rental income, all that kind of stuff. So there's those 2 tests. What we're really looking at here is that within a granny flat right, you've got a series of rules that calculate how much of that money is still exempt. Because often in these circumstances, mum and dad have a house that they live in, which is exempt from the assets and income test. And if they sold it and moved in with the kids, they could lose that status with that money. So that's really the key there.
Yeah, so back to this point where you said, it could be assets. Is there ways that you could effectively, I might make a scenario up, elderly or aged over 65, not that 65 is elderly these days, but we'll say someone in their 80s or 90s, partner dies, left with this house and a big chunk of money or super. Could the granny flat provision work in a way where mum, who's 80, sells the big old house, might have $1 million in super, gets 500,000 from the super and puts 1.5 into the kid's house and tie that whole amount up with the granny flat provision? Or is this one of the things where it's like, don't go there, sister?
No. I mean, yes and no.
Right.
So if she's 80, when we get to I suppose, how it's calculated and what
all right. Well, yeah. Tell me
you'll sort of see how that wouldn't work.
Okay.
But yes, it doesn't have to be tied to the house they had before.
Yes.
Or
it just has to be the amount that's flagged under the granny flat provision.
Correct.
Right. Now, you've given us some options here, and you can see the slides in the studio. So talk to us about these options.
This is the curly-whirly bit.
Right.
Yeah. So when we think about Centrelink, we've got homeowners and non-homeowners.
Yes.
And there is different assessment for those two, and there's a difference between those two amounts. and they're the same for singles and couples. That difference is actually the exact same amount. That difference is relevant here because when you move into a granny flat arrangement, they've got to work out whether or not you're a homeowner or a non-homeowner. So these are, we should position them as options, but it's more just kind of like a way to think about the rules.
Right. Okay. So when you're entertaining this granny flat provision, these are kind of 3 roads that you could go down.
Yeah. And 2 of them are kind of the same road depending on the amount. So,
Right.
so the key thing is this term entry contribution.
Yeah.
So that is, for want of a better situation, she sells the house and some super or wherever the assets come from. That contribution, that entry contribution, is really key in this bit. And so when that is above the difference between homeowner and non-homeowner, that then considers, okay, well, in that situation, they would consider you a homeowner.
Right.
And once you're in the situation, you've moved into that granny flat arrangement, you would be tested under the homeowner rules.
Right. Which would mean slightly less pension than a non-homeowner.
Yeah, lower thresholds,
yeah.
which would result potentially in less pension, yeah.
And I think this is important as well because this would literally be a perfect situation if it was actually a granny flat as well. It's like you've got a decent sized house. We will build a physical granny flat for mum or dad, and they can use these provisions to put money in. Because you could, in theory, use the granny flat provisions with the daughter or the adult children, buy a big block of land and build 2 little properties.
Yes.
One granny flat or smaller dwelling and a big one.
Yeah.
And they don't have to be connected or anything like that, just on the same title.
We'll get into that with the case study.
Awesome.
In terms of like how it looks. But absolutely.
Yeah.
Just because you own a house doesn't mean that that's the house they have to move into.
Yes.
It has, the rules have flexibility around, as I said before, the complexities of life.
Yes.
And I think that's the key here.
Yes.
But if they didn't have a lot of money, that's sort of the option too, right?
Yeah.
So if we click across that next slide for those who are watching, if they've got less than that amount of money, they're considered a non-homeowner. So let's say all they had was 60 or 70 grand. Been self-employed, never saved super. Maybe they, got ripped off. Maybe they were in a retirement village, got in really cheap. By the time they got out, they ended up with 70% of it and a couple $100,000, maybe 150 grand.
Or life happened,
Yeah,
whatever.
life happened, 100%. Separated late in life, all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
Well, if they can enter this arrangement and be considered a non-homeowner, which means depending on the arrangement you have in place, they might be paying a bit of rent towards the household and they could be getting rent assist as well.
Right.
So it treats them like as if they were renting somewhere they were a non-homeowner. Their thresholds are higher and they could potentially get rent assistance. So it tries to replicate the rules in a situation that's really favourable for the complexities of life.
Yeah. Wow. Now, talk to us about the third road.
Yeah, this is I think what most people will. I think option 2, but I wanted to mention where they don't have a lot of money, is probably not uncommon.
Yep.
Option 3 is probably where most people are looking at this, and this is concept of this reasonableness test. And you asked about mum's 80. Could she just sell everything and give everything to the kid?
Is that reasonable, Nathan?
Yeah, there's a test. There's a
Right.
rule, and it's relatively easy to calculate.
Right.
There's a great resource called the Social Security Guide. It's way better than the Centrelink website. And you can jump on there and you can fund this table. And effectively, you multiply the annual partnered pension rate, so as if there was 2 people, times the number that appears based on their age, and you get a number.
Right. A reasonable number.
That dollar value means anything under that dollar value, Centrelink will not consider as part of the tests.
Right.
So yes.
So you could turn it up to that limit if you wanted to offload some money.
Correct.
And that's probably the only way to, quote unquote, gift, inverted commas, significant wealth to, if you had an only child with a spouse with kids and the shoe fit. Because it's like anything. When the shoe fits, the shoe fits. Otherwise, most people won't even consider this. So this is very niche.
Yeah.
But it could be a way to gift a heap of money.
Yeah, so
earlier.
I love that you're using the word gift here. So everyone is familiar with this idea of gifting. And it's this really common belief that, like, I can't give any money. If you're not in Centrelink territory.
Yeah, give all your money to me.
You could give it all to Glen.
And I would really encourage that.
And then you can move in with Glen and a granny flat arrangement. So, and I want to highlight too, the granny flat arrangement doesn't have to involve Centrelink either. So it couldn't be a life interest, but you could have way more money.
Yes.
Okay, so that's, I think, a key to. So in that situation you held before, yes, mum could give everything, but the Centrelink rules would determine the Centrelink implications. The contract would determine the other terms.
And there's an underlying thing that the granny flat provisions is if you're anywhere near being in Centrelink land anyway. Because if you got $5 million in super and $1 million house, like that $1 million house, whatever, you're not getting Centrelink anyway because you got $5 million.
Exactly. But there might be a variety of reasons from an estate planning perspective.
Exactly. But
that kind of stuff that they might be why you do it. But I think a lot of people look into this for Centrelink. I think it's really important to note you don't just do this for Centrelink. Because if the other stuff doesn't stack up, which we'll start talking about that through the case study, this can go bad really fast.
Yeah.
And there was an entire TV show in the 90s related to this. The Everyone Loves Raymond, right? Like being in close proximity to some in-laws is just not going to work.
Do you want to just round out this deprived asset thing?
Yeah. So when we think about gifting, we think about I can gift this much. The gifting rules actually stem from this deprivation, to get technical. And so a deprived asset is anything above the gifting rules for most people, but the gift itself is an exemption on deprivation. So is a granny flat right. So that's kind of where I just wanted to sort of highlight that these rules work similar to gifts. Because for someone who's not doing this, anything more than 10 grand and a year, 30 over 5 is considered.
Okay, so
deprived.
are you saying, because I'm just not in the weeds of Centrelink and aged care planning and, retirement planning in this level, is it to say that every asset that you have outside your family home is considered by Centrelink as a deprived asset?
No, everything you give away. Correct.
Right.
So
right.
You've given it away and they're going to go deprived asset means we will count it on your test for 5 years.
Yes. However, there's a carve out for under $30,000 over 3 years.
Over 5 years. Should be. And $10,000 per year.
We've got a typo. That could be me.
I should have caught that before when I was looking at them. Yeah, well, you've got both actually. You've got it used as a calculation for 5 years. Yes. So $10,000 per year. And that would make sense that it'd be 30 over 3, but what it might be is $6,000 a year for 5.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Cool. So the gifting and the granny flat arrangements is carved out of the deprived assets.
Yeah, it's an exemption. Yeah, and it's probably a bit really deep in the weeds on that one, but I think it's just interesting to think about. Maybe because I just nerd out on this stuff.
Yeah.
But it kind of changes the perspective of like, why does this work? It's not its own standalone thing. It kind of fits into the ecosystem.
Well, we'll take a break, then we'll come back and we'll look at a case study on this granny flat provision. We'll be right back after this.
If you're after personal financial advice, don't get it from a podcast. If you would like help based on your own personal situation, head over to retireright.com.au, click Get Help, and we'd be happy to introduce you to one of our trusted professionals. Our panel of vetted financial advisors and mortgage brokers work with people all over Australia, so they can connect with you wherever you are. That's retireright.com.au and click Get Help.
We're back. All right, Nathan, I might throw to you again and talk us through this case study.
So this case study is very, very close to a real client situation of mine. And the reason I like it is one of the most perfect situations for this to occur, where all of the ducks lined up. And so if anyone is thinking about doing this, they want to be as close to this kind of situation as possible.
Yeah.
And I think that's when some of these ducks don't stack up, the whole thing can fall over. So I think if we start off talking through what could work really well and why it worked, And then we can sort of lean into what could go wrong and things to watch out for, so people can think about, that could be me. Oh, no, actually.
All right.
Maybe not.
Well, I might read it and then we'll talk about all the details. Gail and Peter have decided to move in with their kids, Mary and Paul. They sell their home for $1 million and gift the money to Mary and Paul as consideration to move in, which is the quote-unquote entry contribution. They've gone with option 3 as the entry contribution is substantial, $1 million. So we need to check the reasonableness test. Was that the tongue tie thing that you warned me about?
Yep.
Reasonableness test to see how Centrelink will regard it. Gail is younger than Peter at 65, so we will check the table for her age, getting a conversion factor of 21.48, multiplying that by the annual partnered pension rate, which is, as at today, 43.5K. Now,
I think that's slightly old.
Yeah, so this is an older case study, but the principles remain.
The principles are the same. The rates will be slightly different. Yeah.
So you get a figure of $939,000.
So I just want to jump on that quickly.
Yep.
Because it says we use the younger age. That's not because we chose to.
Right.
It's what you do.
Right.
So the first thing to think about that is if you've got situations where one party is actually quite a lot younger than the other, it can play in your advantage.
Right.
But you use the younger person entering that agreement when you're looking up the number on the table to work out the reasonableness test figure.
Yeah, cool.
And the younger you are, the better the multiple is probably something to take away from that as well. So these guys being 65, it's quite high. The older they get, that 80-year-old case we talked about before, that number's a lot smaller.
So they can give $939,000-ish to the kids as consideration when they move in, and Centrelink will ignore that amount when it comes to their asset test.
Correct.
Awesome. Any amount above that figure will count on Gail and Peter's Centrelink assessment for 5 years.
It's a deprived asset.
Yes.
Yep.
Mary and Paul can do what they want with the money. So Mary and Paul could literally own the house outright and not need Gail and Peter's money. But they're like, look, we're going to move in. Here's $1 million. Thanks for letting us live down the back of your house.
Yeah.
Yep.
There's no condition on what they have to do from the Centrelink's perspective.
Yeah, cool. Chances are the current home of Mary and Paul is not quite set up to have an additional 2 adults move in while maintaining some semblance of independence between the two couples. Mary and Paul could use this money to renovate the home or buy a new, larger home with a substantial mortgage and pay a lot of it off with this money. So talk to us about these real-life details here.
So what did they do? So in this situation, we've got so Peter was quite he'd suffered a workplace accident right before he retired.
Right.
And so because they're quite young, and it really put a pin in the whole idea of retirement. So Gail's still working, but she's also taking care of Peter, but she also loves taking care of the grandkids. And so she's the one that got in touch in the first place. And she's like, I've heard about this stuff. She'd already done the numbers. And she was like, I just want to make sure we do it right. But what she actually lost was any social network. She was going to work. She was taking care of the kids. She was taking care of her husband. And in this situation, they were like, well, we want to do this because we're going to move in. They're going to add another floor to the house. And we're going to live in the bottom section. They're going to live in the top section. We'll have a communal living area. And it also meant that the grandkids are closer, less commuting, and that the kids they're moving in with can also help out with Peter. So she could spend more time enjoying herself as well. And so it was kind of this perfect scenario from that perspective. But also, in this instance, they'd lived together before.
Yeah.
So during COVID, they moved in together and they lived together while they were saving for this house.
Right.
And they got along. And I think that's, of all of the technical Centrelink rules and all the rest of it, that is probably the most important thing.
Yes.
If you're doing something like this. You have to live with this person for the lifetime.
Yeah.
It's in the contract.
Yeah.
And that's key.
And it may work better with some cultures. And, I'm not moving with my parents, but I know others that would. So yeah, it's that's an interesting one. So back to the cricket here. So none of them wanted residential care,
No, don't. In fact, a big part of this was also they never want to go into care.
right? I mean, no one wants to go into care,
No.
but sometimes it might happen.
It was part of the agreement.
Right.
And this, we'll get into, I suppose, some of the technical stuff about the agreements and what you can and can't include
Yes.
in a second. But I think there was some expectations.
Yes.
And really thorough conversations around expectations and around boundaries.
Yeah, and it's interesting here from an estate planning thing, Paul is the only child.
Yeah.
So if there was other kids, might not work. Now, let's talk some broader risks of using the granny flat provisions.
Yeah, I think there's more that can go wrong that can go right with these, which is why they're so particular. So a lot of the time we've spent talking about Centrelink because that's what people think about using them. But the two sides to a granny flat right, there's the Centrelink aspect, what you give to Centrelink is the information, but you're going to contract it. You're going to put it down in a contract.
Right, okay, so it's not just do the razzle-dazzle in real life and tell Centrelink and we've got this granny flat provisions. You'd want to do a contract with the other person to the lifetime tenancy and whatnot. Then you say to Centrelink, hey, this is happening.
Correct.
So you've got to walk and chew bubblegum with both of these
Correct.
things.
It's a life interest.
Yeah.
And it works like they all do. So, and when you do that, you've got to make sure you line up your ducks. So like one of the first things, or the hardest things to think about is what do you put in that contract? So you can put everything in there, which is great until something changes. How do you adhere to all of it? You put nothing in there, which is great until you need to enforce something. It's so hard to get that right broadly. I think on a case-by-case situation, you both get financial advice, you both get legal advice, you come to a heads of agreement and then you go and get it contracted and then you sign it. You know what you're in for. For, our case before, our case study, they included some aspects in there around minimum levels of care and sharing household duties.
Right, in the contract.
In the contract.
Right, okay.
But they didn't end up putting a lot of detail into what that meant because they didn't want to create difficulty. So one of the advantages in that situation was that money did some renovation work. And it's probably good to highlight this too. When they did it, it wasn't one transaction. It was a series of transactions. So Centrelink would have loved it when I sent it to them because I sent them a cover letter that explained every single transaction and every single invoice so that they could add it all up to match off the number.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be one transaction. But in doing that, the kids had a bit of a surplus from the reno. They were able to knock down their mortgage almost entirely, and both of them reduced their days at work. So they were able to contribute. But factors can change. Job situations can change. Who can care for who? All that kind of stuff does come into it. So if you over-contract, it's difficult. If you don't put anything, it's hard to enforce.
Yeah, and I think these granny flat provisions, it's almost in the investment product world, I always say like the investment bond is the product where the pendulum swings the most. So it's like it's either really, really good for someone and perfect, or the other way, really, really don't even go there.
Yeah.
And this kind of granny flat provision, it is like that, isn't it?
Yeah, it's got a real Goldilocks vibe to it.
Yeah, multiple kids and, health. Like, I don't know, it's just...
Let's add another kid into that case study. Let's say there's a sibling and mum and dad have just sold their main asset. They've still got some super and a bit of money. They've given that across. The kids have now got to care for mum and dad, but also they got all the money. That money's gone. There's no clawing that back in the estate.
No, because the estate's emptied.
Yeah. So how do you balance that in there? Well, we'll do 50-50 of all our other assets between our two kids. Oh, yeah, but my brother got all that money already. Yeah, but it doesn't count.
Yeah, so you can't – so, for example, if you had the $1 million and there was 2 kids, you can't say we're doing $1 million under granny flat, quote unquote, 500 lands in the lap of the people that you're living with and the 500 in the other kids. No, that 500's deprived.
Yeah.
It's going to the place that you're not living.
Well, if you gifted it, it would be a deprived asset. Yeah, but also let's say you said we'll give $1 million to the kids we're going to live with and all of our money goes to the other child. That's a terrible plan because that will be challenged. There's the concept of consideration within estate planning. The kids who had mum and dad live with them for a long time could say, hey, I didn't get anything in this will. I challenge it. And they'll have a case. So I think that's the estate planning piece is, again, bringing lawyers in, financial advisors can help with the financial aspects of it and the Centrelink aspects of it. Lawyers are going to be able to help with the contractual side and then the estate planning implications as well.
So, question, I've got friends. So I'm going to ask you two questions that are just food for thought. I've got friends, one batch of friends, they bought a big property with their parents, call it 2 acres, 3 acres, whatever, okay? There's a big house on it where they live with their kids, and then up the back, the parents live in their cottage. Now, they just did it, so they're all on title, and they did it 70-30 because that was the proportions. Now, that's cleaner because the two that live in the cottage, mum and dad, there's 5 kids and just one of them live on the property. Like the granny flat provision may have only worked if there was the single child there.
Yeah.
Or you still wouldn't have needed it, potentially.
Yeah.
But I think in that situation, and because these people both eligible for Centrelink, do you think they would have been better off if they did entertain a granny flat provision, or it doesn't matter that it's just a 70-30 title because Centrelink will just deem the 30% that they own of it as their house?
Yeah, so if they're still homeowner, it would depend on the other assets they have,
Yeah.
how much Centrelink they're getting, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that the factors go into it. How old were they when they entered the arrangement, all that kind of stuff. But if they're able to make it work, still get the pension they need, still meet their needs, but reduce all of these other risks,
Yeah.
I
that's
would
right.
say
And
they
because
could still tick the box,
Yeah,
right?
and because if in that situation they did the granny flat provision where they're like, all right, we're going to put we'll just say the property was worth $1 million, right? We're going to put our $300,000, give it to the kids on site, but then the other kids, there's an estate planning snookering because then that money is gone from the estate. So I think that way they've done it is good. Now, another scenario that I wanted to talk to you about, it might be loosely paraphrased and that details might not be as accurate, but you'll get the gist or the gist, whatever they say.
The GIF.
Yep. The GIF. Friends of mine, they're 2 kids. They're both married. That's kind of irrelevant. But their dad suffered a brain injury many years ago. And the parents separated. So old mate with the brain injury, he's been on income protection for the last 20 years, can function as a human, but cognitively there can be some advantages taken. So long story short, he met a woman in the town that they were living in. They were together less than a year. Next minute, she moved in. He basically titled the house over to her or half of it or something like that. Next minute, she's leaving him. It was a bit of a good old-fashioned taking advantage of somebody who maybe couldn't compute or thought he was doing the right thing. And the wash-up of it is they're selling the house and he either gifted half of it or put the whole title on her for whatever reason, okay? But the question I've got is, and I was talking to my friend's mum at a party because she's still it's all amicable. She was telling me about Mr. who's been taken advantage of and with the brain injury. He's wanting to buy another house and downsize as well. We'll call it a villa or something like that. We'll just make a number up. He might have $800,000 to buy a property. And they're really, after the wash up of the separation and, they've just gone like, look, anyway. So my question is, in this scenario, can he, because he's got the 2 daughters who are adults, can we use the granny flat provisions and tick the estate planning box, have the house owned by the two daughters and he lives in it and not have that, call it $800,000 flagged as a gift to protect him from being taken advantage of because of the intellectual, cognitive brain injury stuff. Does that make sense? I know.
Yeah, there's layers to this.
So it's just more, rock up tomorrow.
If
We've
we
got a guy who needs to buy a house, but they want to protect it from him shacking up with someone who's like, yeah, let's move in together after 5 minutes, and she takes his money. So can the house go in the daughter's name without triggering a gift for Centrelink when the time comes?
You're going to hate my answer.
Yeah.
Because the question we need to answer is, who is this for?
Yes.
And is he a person? Is he able to make his own decisions even if they are terrible?
Right. Okay.
And
so
this is I get this kind of inquiry more often than I wish I did.
Yeah.
When people ring me and they say, this is what's happened.
Yeah, I'm of sound mind, but I do dumb things is different than I've got an intellectual disability.
Correct. So can he make decisions? Can he even enter these arrangements in the first place is a big question that comes to me straight away.
I think he can, but it's that overwhelm and, that seems like a good idea, but someone's because he's a bit slower.
Yeah. And then the who is it for bit is complex because you could say, it's because then the house is in my name and I have these assets. You could say we've preserved the estate. You could say we don't want Dad being ripped off again because then one of us is going to end up having him live with us and we're going to have to take care of him and fork out for him. All of those things are more about me than they are about Dad.
Yeah.
And Dad has agency. Dad is a person, even if we don't like the decisions he's making. And that part of it is really hard sometimes. We want to do the best by them. But if he is his own person, no one's able to act on his behalf, he can make the terrible mistakes and he's allowed to.
Yeah. So the only thing I'm thinking in this situation is, and I've just texted my friend, I don't know if she'll reply between now and the next 2 minutes. I said, random question, how old is your dad? If Dad's 60 or 62, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 62 or younger, he could gift that money to the two girls, buy the house in their name, sign a lifetime tenancy arrangement, and he can live there as long. But if he moves in with someone, it's not his house. And then if he comes online for Centrelink at age 67, it's been longer than 5 years, he's living in a house rent-free.
The big questions are going to come back to, who is this for? Who's directing it? Is someone driving him to the office to sign the papers, to give the money? These are the things that are going to set off alarm bells for most professionals. It doesn't mean it can't be done. I think these are those sensitive situations where...
Yeah, because it could, like, the casual observer could look in and say, well, it's financial abuse from the daughters, but without the context and...
So it's very, very case by case, and that's why I say you're going to hate my answer because it's a non-answer. It's not even an it depends because it's so much deeper than that because it's not a... I wouldn't even start looking at the granny flat how. I'd be starting at the why.
Well, the premise is, how do we protect Dad from himself?
Yeah. So what?
Okay, this is interesting. You scratch this surface, brain injury aside, all that stuff. We've got someone who's got means and he's a gambler.
Yep.
How do we make it so they can live in this house, $800,000, rent-free? They can't go in and get a reverse mortgage. How does that work?
I've literally had this kind of inquiry.
Really?
Where the kids have bailed out Mum and Dad to keep the holiday house.
Yeah.
They made sure it stayed because Mum and Dad were gamblers and they never wrote any of it down. And they're like, well, we're going to take ownership of the house. And the house is in Sorrento in Victoria. So it was worth $100,000 and now it's worth 1.5 mil. And they're like, well, we paid it off. We made sure, that's too bad. You didn't write it down. You didn't change ownership. And now they're worried that Mum and Dad have still got that issue. This is part of the unfortunate part of life, I think. But I'll flip it around the other way. What if you did transfer the money to the daughters to protect dad, and one of the daughters is married, and then they separate?
Well,
And is the asset still siloed? Now the asset's disappeared in a different way, which when we look at granny flat arrangements is sort of one of those challenges that comes in generally as well.
Okay,
it's like
so
life happens at all angles, right?
So if you, we said we weren't getting in the weeds, but you're entering into a territory where that house and the property could be a candidate to be owned by a trust.
That's when you start looking at this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And you start with who's this for? Why are we doing this? Who's making decisions? Can they make decisions? And then you enter.
Yeah, you're right, because you're at risk if there is marital breakdown between one of the daughters, that's an estate or a family law property asset. Unless there was
business
a binding
issues or
unless there was a financial agreement in place. Yeah. And I mean, this is just
and we start spiraling real fast.
Yeah.
But it is a good segue though into there's what we call a 5-year rule in granny flats, which is you have to be if the arrangement needs to be broken within 5 years, it has, and it's something that could have been reasonably anticipated. It wasn't a real arrangement.
Oh, it was a razzle dazzle, and
they'll go all the way back.
Right.
Yeah. So it's actually a great segue back onto the train tracks. Is to say, if marriage is on the rocks, I mean, that's probably a hard one, but like if there's certain health that, we're going to set up a granny flat arrangement, but dad's really not well and he's going to need to go into residential care relatively soon. And this is something that's come across my desk before. Can we set one of these up? But what does reasonably likely to go in mean? I'm not going to make that call. I'm not a doctor. So this is the kind of that's where some of these challenges can really come in, is that it's a lifetime tenancy. It's a lifetime thing. All of these family factors start playing in, these health factors, what can reasonably be expected to happen. Well, it turns out we were always going to move to Queensland in 2 years. Now we've got to wind the whole thing up. Centrelink will go back to the start as if it didn't exist.
Right. So I'm just stuck at my friend's situation, sorry, because my brain is just thinking a potential way around it. And I will say there is all goodwill, there is love, there is not one drip of financial abuse on the horizon in this situation. It's either, Dad, before you flip and do anything that's significant with transferring ownership or getting a reverse mortgage or bounce it off us. We'll help you.
High trust.
That's a good idea, Dad. Let's do that. No, Dad, that's risky because if your relationship breaks down again, you're going to lose half the house again.
Yep.
Or,
I mean, I'd say the first thing before anything, what is dad's state? What is the current state of play? I would suggest you get cognitively assessed.
Yeah, and that was leading to my we get assessed and potentially get a joint power of attorney on the two daughters.
Now, again, why are you getting the power of attorney? We're driving dad to the office to gain power of attorney. He's got questionable cognition. Now, it could be all the best intentions in the world, but for every 9 of those, there's one that's not. And that's the hardest part with all of this. And this is 90% of my work when you described me before. It's like maybe having the daughters as power of attorney, but having an alternative where the daughters are conflicted is actually important. You can actually write into power of attorney documentations that you can act in conflict in certain situations. They can be drafted in. For good lawyers drafting good documents for people that fully understand it, the daughters are definitely not driving dad to that appointment. There's so much that flies into this, but it's not just about the reality. Sometimes it's about the perception. And because often people will say stuff to me like, oh, we're power of attorney for mum and dad. We want to get them more Centrelink. So we're thinking we'll just gift $10,000 to each other. Yeah, because we can do that, right? It's like, firstly, like just listen to what that sounds like. Oh, no, I didn't mean we want to, do anything. We just didn't think. We were actually trying to do what's in the best interest. But how it can be perceived is the other way. And you never want that to come into question.
Yeah. And that's in these, like, you're right. Like, it gets to the point where you can't protect people from their own stupidity sometimes, particularly if they don't think they're doing stupid things.
Yeah.
And we're all guilty of that.
And It's terrible watching a car crash in slow motion when you know you could have done something, but you couldn't have done something.
So, in summarising, the granny flat provisions, it's a great tool. Just give us a summary because
where you've got great,
like all these R numbers and that, it's so complex.
it's not. I wouldn't even start with those numbers.
No.
We went there because it's important to understand how it works. If you're thinking about this, you want to be in a situation where the people entering the arrangement, the people moving in, understand what's happening, and it's for them. And the people who are you're being moved in understand what's happening, and they've got something for them. That everyone is winning, I think is really important. You've addressed the estate aspects. You've addressed do we even get along? Are there things unsaid? Oh, we get along really well. But yeah, that needs to be addressed. If you can't have a mature conversation and set boundaries and respect boundaries and have arguments and that be okay, this is a bad place to be.
Yeah.
You are now living with this person for the rest of their life. It is not a small thing.
But this is where it gets cooked fast, I think. If someone, we'll call it the $1 million, the ton. Dad died a few years ago. Mum's in the big old house. Single child with a family and kids in their late 10s or whatever, around primary school age or whatever. Yeah, we're going to buy a bigger block. We're going to build a new house with a literal granny flat out the back. Mum's going to put the $1 million in. She's got a lifetime tenancy in the granny flat. You get screwed potentially very fast, and it could be a segue to our next episode. What happens if mum takes a fall and literally has to have a carer full-time, either in-home, which is fine, but if mum had a cognitive decline pretty fast, dementia walked in.
It's too hard to take care of.
Too hard to take care of in the granny flat out the back because, the front house, we've all got a life and kids and things are moving. What do we do?
Yeah. And there's an episode on this because if she has no money, she
doesn't because she just gave $1 million to put into this house with the granny flat out the back.
She'd be low means fully supported or partially supported. The cost of entering care are drastically lower than if she had money. So there
could be a silver lining.
Yeah, but these factors are what good financial advice in these situations will assess.
And that's it. Like the more I think about this, these granny flat provisions are probably only any good where there's an only child.
Yes and no.
Okay.
I think if the other children know what's happening and it's handled properly, they can still work.
But how do the other children, if mum had a $1 million house, mum knows, when I die, I want the 3 kids to have $300,000 each. We use the granny flat provisions. Is there a loan agreement drawn up as well with the siblings that's triggered when mum falls off the perch?
You could do a range of stuff like that, but I'll also say I can think of a case where brother's over in the US, daughter's here, granny flat arrangement, mum moves in, mum's taking care of the grandkids a lot. Kids
so there's that
more.
financial trade-off. It's like mum gets mum gets the benefit of being near family, being secure, no maintenance on the property.
Doesn't have to worry about bills and stuff.
It's
That's all
a
taken care
win-win.
of. And the son in the US is like, absolutely, that makes total sense.
Yeah,
I just want mum to be happy.
But knowing the son in the US, mum gave $1 million to his sister, effectively, because mum's living there.
Yeah, and the son said, yeah, but mum's living with you and you're going to take care of mum.
Yes.
It's the best I could hope for.
But this
It's
story,
it's a
but you get
situation.
some cockhead who's money hungry, it falls over pretty fast.
And people get weird when money gets involved. So it's not a bad idea to have psychology appointments or mediation or some form of family planning sessions.
The only other way to do it is kind of what my friends did, is literally buy the block and do a pro rata title thing.
Where the asset is still owned by them.
Mum,
And that's a different thing. But I think when you come to these scenarios, so I had someone in contact me once said, mum's passed away, dad's lonely, he lives quite a far away. We're thinking about doing a granny flat. And so we sat down together and we went, okay, granny flat looks like this, him living nearby looks like this, aged care looks like this.
Okay, so just on that, the terminology, we're thinking about doing a granny flat, aka granny flat provision or
Correct.
a literally granny flat and we don't know the financial arrangement?
Yeah, I mean, he was like granny flat.
Yeah.
Move in, build a place out the back. So I spent the time explaining how that would work. What would it look like if you just bought nearby? What are the downsides and upsides? Like stamp duty and all that kind of stuff. Dad living by himself, etc. And what would it look like if he went into care? Well, he didn't need care yet. So we kind of covered that off and then looked at those other two options and went, okay, well, if he moved in with us, what does that mean? If he lived around the corner, what does that mean? And they went, he doesn't need to move in with us. And also, you know, wife's at home. We've got two kids under 3. Dad's around. Who's taking care of Dad? If he does need care, it's actually my wife. Like, is she cool with that? All of these things
so you've pretty much just got to do this. These are the 5 or 6 things that could happen. You keep ticking them off. And when you get to one that's like, oh, that's a hard no, this isn't for me, this option.
Think about it like, what problem are we trying to solve? This is a way to do it. It's like the product thing you said before.
Not everything's for everyone.
We want to invest money. We're going to look at which structures we invested in. We're going to look at, you know, the tax implications and the access restrictions. And there's pros and cons to all of that. But the ultimate outcome is we want mum and dad to have a healthy, comfortable, safe situation where they're not lonely. And we look at all of the options on our way there, and then we pick the one that's the best option. This is something important to consider, but it doesn't mean by exploring it, it's going to be where you land.
Yeah, and I guess the way that you set it up with other siblings, you could potentially, do a private loan agreement or something. Anyway, look, lots to cover there. Look, if you, have any questions about this or you are considering this, it might be worth paying for some advice or at least reaching out. We'll put your website, Nathan, in the show notes. I don't usually do this blatantly because I don't want people contacting you for stuff where they're not going to suit you. But if you're in a situation where there could be a situation where there are some moving parts and a little bit of complexity, you'll have a call with someone just to see which way the wind's blowing and point them in the right direction and see
Happy
if
to
you
do a 15-minute quick call, and or if they want time, like an hour of time just to understand it better without going to the full advice, we can do that as well.
Yeah, sweet.
And this case study is also written out as a blog too. If they just want to revisit it and kind of read through it, it's on the website.
All right, we'll put that in the comments and the show notes as well. So thank you so much, Nathan Fradley. Nathan, actually, at the time of recording this, he's come up from Melbourne today to Newcastle. He was landing in Newcastle at 10 a.m. or something, but he ended up walking in the door at 3:30, 4 o'clock. So
it's a big transit.
We had some issues leaving Melbourne today.
Yeah, a tyre with a nail in it, apparently.
Yes, but thank you so much. And I think the next episode we might redo an aged care refresher because that will tie in well to put as the next episode after this. And then we're going to redo the retiring with Centrelink. And then we're going to do one retiring without Centrelink. How much do we need and how long will it last? So thank you so much for listening. If you found this confusing, well, join the party. My name's Glen James. Thanks for listening today. Bye.
Any advice is general financial advice only, which does not take into account your objectives, financial situation, or needs. Because of that, you should consider if the advice is appropriate to you and your needs before acting on the information. If you do choose to buy a financial product, read the Product Disclosure Statement, PDS, and Target Market Determination, TMD, and obtain appropriate financial advice tailored to your needs. Simo Interactive, Pty Ltd, and Glen James are authorised representatives of Money Sherpa Pty Ltd, which holds Financial Services Licence 451289. Martin McGrath, Financial Edge Group, and its employed financial advisors are authorised representatives of Synchron Advice, AFSL 243313. Opinions or comments from any guest on the podcast are theirs, and not those of the hosts, the publisher, or their respective licence holders.